Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. Let's talk a little bit about martial law. And before we do, I'm not wearing these sunglasses to be cool. I'm wearing them because the sun is in my eyes. If you want to see my eyes, look at any of my other videos. Let's talk about martial law. If you haven't already seen my video, Martial Law, Jade Helm, Do the Math, go back and watch that. I think we can all agree that nobody wants to live under martial law, right? I think most of the powers that be don't want to have to enact martial law. Martial law is a bad thing. Things get chaotic, things get out of hand, and so the powers that be clamp down and put martial law. Let's look at Katrina. A lot of people hold up Katrina. And when I say martial law, I don't necessarily mean that the Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marines has been sent in to do law enforcement functions. Like the judge who was trying to talk about pornography, he said, I can't define it, but I know what it is when I see it. Hey, when guys are out there dressed up like wannabe commandos with armored cars and they are restricting the liberty of Americans who aren't doing anything wrong, that's martial law. Right? Okay, I think we all can kind of understand that. So you look at Katrina. There's two ways to look at Katrina. The one way that all the comments on my Jade Helm video are looking at, they went house to house and took guns from people. That was a bad thing. Most of the people, probably the vast majority of the people they took guns from needed those guns then more than at probably any other time. The people and this was in New Orleans for the most part, many people in New Orleans were going crazy, right? Just going nuts. It was chaos out there. There were shootings and lootings and oh my. And so people needed guns to protect themselves, and the response of law enforcement was to go in there and take them from people. Now, that's a bad thing. And the powers that be said, yeah, they recognize that as a bad thing, and it'll never happen again. Well, I think things got a little bit out of hand during Boston, too, didn't they? I don't know that they took anybody's guns, but they definitely violated Fourth Amendment there, right? So martial law is bad. And nobody wants to live under it. I think I said that. It's early. So what are the responses to martial law? Because I still stand by my statement that they cannot declare martial law over the entire United States. There's just not enough resources to do it. People respond to that. It only takes, one guy with a machine gun to kowtow 1,000 people or something like that. Yeah, if those people want to be kowtowed. But to what point? At some point people say that's enough. And Americans, we are a fighting people. I have not been following closely, but I just started reading really yesterday about this miners BLM standoff up in Oregon. My take on it, and again, some of y'all know a whole lot more about it than me, and I guess there's a lot of videos on it. Unfortunately, I don't get to watch a whole lot of videos because I'm not online. But my take on it is BLM said they were going to come in and take over some long-standing miners' claims and burn down their shacks and stuff like that. And the miners said, oh, heck no, you're not. And so the BLM served them some kind of cease and desist order and said, you've got X amount of time to be gone. And the militias and the, who are those people? Patriot Guard? No. Who was it? Somebody. You guys will know, everyone will say about it. Some group of people Oath Keepers came in, started flooding in, right? The message went out, people started flooding into that region, and then BLM backed down. I say good. Somebody asked me just the other day, what do I think about Oath Keepers? I'm really not political. I don't really care about politics because I think we've lost. But I think in this instance, that was good because I do believe BLM would have gone in there, taken that land, and burned down those shacks or cabins or whatever they are. So the militia, the people, backed down the government right there, and in a case where I think that was a good thing to do. So who learned from that? Everybody. Right? Not just the militia, not just the Oath Keepers, the people, the BLM and others. Marshals, U.S. Marshals, and FBI are looking at that and doing lessons learned on that. And in that case, that would have been like a mini case of martial law. But they can't do that everywhere. There's just not enough resources to do that. There's only so many SWAT teams. I mean, that's the reality. Having said that, let's say something terrible. Oh, one more thing about Katrina. So we looked at it, it was bad that martial law was declared and they went in and took guns. Look at it from another aspect, though. I mean, honestly, and I tell you guys all the time, try not to emote, try to think. Try not to emote, try to think. It's very difficult for some of you, especially the 17-year-olds living in their parents' basements. Yeah, I'm still a little bit irritated at some of y'all. But seriously, think about this. What if you are the governor of, or the mayor? You know, I'm not sure who asked for the assistance, but you are a person, an elected official in charge of New Orleans. And chaos happens. Katrina comes in, does a big wham wham on them, and some bad elements start taking advantage of that and start burning stuff and looting stuff and doing that kind of thing. And your police, who are corrupt to the core, walk off the job, and some of them join in the looting. And what are you going to do? Because, see, you have a duty to the citizenry to protect them. I can understand why they would declare martial law. And, then some things got out of hand and people acted stupidly. Same thing in America. What if we get hit by an asteroid strike or an EMP or Krakatoa goes off in Yellowstone or, whatever. Continuity of government, well, continuity of government has two reasons. One, to protect themselves, right? But the other reason is to keep America viable, right? And so, if cities are burning because the people are setting them on fire, what would you do if you were in charge? Drop back 10 and punt? I mean, no, you're going to try and save your city by whatever means. So you got to look at it from the other side. All right, so I was thinking about this morning, I think there's 3 responses to martial law should it come to your area. And those responses are deal with it, flee, or fight. Okay, so let's talk about those quickly. Let's say you're in an area where, for whatever reason, martial law is declared. The troops come in of whatever form, but, they got guns and body armor and helmets and, and a bad attitude. It's very similar to an enemy invasion in some ways. In some ways, it's not. And I'm going to come back to Katrina on that. But let's say it happens in your area. They slap down curfews. They start searching cars, maybe they control how much food you can get by giving you tickets or something. And so in order to do that, to keep people from hoarding, because there's a difference between stockpiling and hoarding, another video for another time, but to keep people from hoarding, they've got to issue ID cards and whatever. And so they've got to control the populace. I mean, they have to do it. And so let's say that happens. Well, one thing you could do is just deal with it. I mean, you could, right? You could line up and get your temporary ID card and your little wristband and line up for water and food, and don't go outside once it gets dark, and stay in your house and, hope that everything gets better. It's a viable strategy, and I guess I'll go there right now because we're going to go to resisting it here in a second. But I'll wait. I'll wait till we get there. All right. So you could deal with it, and probably, at least historically, in every case, things would work out. Eventually, they would. And you would probably be okay. I think probably a better option is the second option is to flee. Leave. If martial law, like example Ferguson, right? Ferguson, martial law was declared in Ferguson because of the riots. It really doesn't matter why the riots happen. If you're living there, martial law's coming. That's no good. I would have left. I would have left. You could see it coming. Everybody could see it coming. I would have left Ferguson if I lived there or had a business there and went somewhere else and hung out. Go to Aunt Mabel's house and, help her paint the barn or something. But leave. And then you don't have to deal with it because they cannot declare martial law over the whole country. And so get out while the getting's good. At some point, depending on what's going on, yeah, they will throw cordons up around an area and not let anybody in or out. Then you're stuck, all right? That's no bueno. And so if you're going to leave early. I think that's a great option. Something else you can do is leave now, right? They are not going to declare martial law in my part of the Ozarks for any reason. It ain't going to happen. There's no resources there. There's not enough people there to bother with. There's no resistance movement starting up there that, would make them be a pinprick on a map that somebody has to go deal with. There's just nothing going on except some poor farmers, cattle people. It's just not going to happen. And so I really encourage y'all to move now. Move away from those areas with the potential for martial law. All right, so you could deal with it. You could flee either, during it, right immediately before it, or preferably now. Leave those areas. It's still a free country. You can still move where you want to, and yes, you can get a job despite the job figures. You may not get a job making $80K, but you can get a job. I know, another tangent, right? All right, let's look at the other one. Resisting. You could resist martial law. You certainly could. And I guess now that's where I'll come to this. You know, when they were going house to house taking guns in Katrina, that was unconstitutional. We know that, right? That was wrong. And should that have been resisted? Let's just put it that way. And when I say resisted, I mean with force, with violence, right? Shooting back. Well, what would have happened if people had? Where would those people be today? In debt or in jail. But at least they die free. Well, look at them now. The people who didn't resist are free now and have their guns, I think. Maybe they didn't give them back, but I bet you they did. And if not, you can buy more and still be free and move to Montana, right? You really got to think about resisting. There is a time to resist. There certainly is a time to resist. But you got to be smart and you got to think, not emote, right? How do you resist martial law? And I hesitate to go here, and I'm not going to go here deep because I'm really not one of those guys. But there could be illegal martial law. I mean, heck, it could be like Red Dawn, right? You know, where the North Koreans or the Chinese invade and they declare martial law. I prefer to think of it in those terms, quite frankly. But the bottom line is this. They are used to a non-resisting people, but they are ready for resistance. And the way they, because it's a military tactic, the way they are going to deal with resistance is with a 40-pound sledgehammer, right? Because you want to make an example of people right out of the get-go. So, excuse me, you know, if somebody comes and they say, you know, knock, knock, knock on the door and they're coming to take the guns and you start shooting, you know, your AR out of the back window or something, oh, Lord, you know, 50 guys in tanks and helicopters are coming to your house and you're not going to win. You're going to die. I mean, it's just bottom line. You're gonna. And then they will make sure that everybody sees that. And everyone will know, ooh, if I resist, they're going to hammer me. And so, oh, what is to be done? Resistance is futile. That's the message they're trying to get across, that resistance is futile. But resistance is not futile. The problem is most Americans, and even, yes, those in the Patriot Party, are very selfish. They're very me-centered. And they're like, me, 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 me. They're also... There are a lot of talk and there are not a lot of action. Like I said, I was surprised at what happened with the BLM thing, and that might have been a good thing. I think Bundy Ranch may have, and again, I didn't follow that. I'm not political, but didn't a whole bunch of militia people show up and then ended up and they just stood down? Because it wasn't worth the fight that was coming. You got to make it not worth their while. All warfare is really warfare of the mind. Right? It really is. It's a test of wills. How far are you willing to go? The reason guerrilla warfare works when it does is because they just tire out the oppressor, the enemy, the people with the the big guns and the big tanks. Because guerrilla warfare is warfare of the weak. Right? It is. If they don't have their own tanks and therefore so they resort to guerrilla warfare, and it wins because they've got more willpower. All right? And it's just like, man, it's just not worth it for us to go out here and fight anymore. And so what you have to do if you're resisting something like that is fight for your neighbor. Not even your neighbor, you got to fight for the next town, as shown in the Bundy Ranch and I guess this BLM thing. You know, people left their homes and went there. Cool. That's how you got to do it. Because if you wait till they come to your house, I tell people in another video, you don't defend your home from your mailbox. If you do that, you've already lost. You have lost, right? If you wait till they're at your house, you've lost. And so if you're going to resist, you got to resist early, and you got to help other people, and you got to think about flanks. You know, when there's 4 guys kicking in the front door and 4 guys kicking in the back door and a perimeter of guys going out, that perimeter is only so big. What happens if that perimeter gets attacked from the outside? Ooh, different problem, right? And that's about as far as I want to go with that. But there are ways to resist, but you basically you got to get into it. You know, you got to do it offensively, not defensively. Don't think defensively. Don't think cross this line and that's it. You know, you got to think offensively if you want to successfully resist. I think I'll leave it at that. Really, the best option is to flee. I mean, you know, you're a coward. I'm smart, man. There's things I want to do in life. You know, I want to bounce my great-grandchildren on my knee, which I don't have them yet. I want to do those kinds of things. And, you know, I was in the military for 20 years. I'm not looking for a fight, right? A lot of people who say they aren't because they don't have a clue. They don't have a clue, right? So move. Move to a place where they're not going to declare martial law, or deal with it. I submit to you the people who dealt with it in Katrina are better off today than if they had resisted. But if the time comes to resist, resist violently, resist early, and go on the offense. Don't stay on the defense. All right, words of wisdom or not from Pastor Joe. I'll see you out there.